Today's interview is with Jeremiah Hines. Jeremiah is a property manager in Cincinnati, Ohio. And we talk today about short-term rentals. We talk a lot about short-term rentals and how he manages and how their company manages. So really cool insight into the processes that they've put in place to succeed. So stick around for all of that. As always, like and subscribe on Wrestling with Real Estate, the YouTube channel. Go to the WWRE Podcast and give me a 5-star rating and write me a review. It really does help build this platform, so please go ahead and do that. And I'm looking to speak to as many of you as possible. If you're interested in real estate, whatever capacity that is, I'd love to get to know you, see if there's any way whatsoever I can help you. So go to the link in the description down below, or go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com and sign up there. But before all of that, stick around for today's awesome interview with Jeremiah Hines. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today we're joined by Jeremiah Hines. How are you doing, Jeremiah?
I am excellent. Thank you, Barry.
Cool. Well, thanks for being here today, and thanks for making time to get on this call and kind of have a great conversation about real estate. I'm excited to dive in today. But before we do you want to give people an idea about your background, what you've been up to, and what your current focus is?
Absolutely, yeah. So let's see. I'll try to dive in rather quickly. I have people passing by.
I noticed people in the background.
It's exciting stuff that I want to see. I love it. So we'll do the ultra quick background starting back. Well, so I'm 25 years old. So I jumped into entrepreneurship pretty young. I played piano. I learned to tune pianos. I bought my piano tuner's business when I was 16. And started kind of managing through that, and then realized it was still sort of a hours for dollars kind of a thing. And so got to college, studied entrepreneurship here in Northern Kentucky. And then I was like, okay, so my dad had a few rental properties, and he had always been telling me, real estate, financial freedom, cash flow, like these are the terms that are, starting to float around my brain as an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
So sophomore year of college, I bought a house and flipped it. All summer I worked there. I did all the work myself, made enough money to pay off a little bit of student debt. And then I was like, man, that was a giant amount of work. And I paid my realtor 60% of what I actually made on the whole deal. And so I was like, well, maybe I should be a realtor. So I got my real estate license in college. And then once I got my real estate license, I was like, you know what, I need to learn from people that are smarter than me. And right now I know nothing. So I will start with the only thing I do know, which is manual labor, because I had done maintenance and stuff on my dad's properties growing up. And so I started working for some guys down in Covington, just pushing brooms and cleaning up and managing contractors and stuff, just on a very small, flip, just little small flips and stuff like that. And then from there, I started doing maintenance for a gentleman who is now a business partner of mine, and whose property I manage. And he had 10 units at the time. So I started managing for him. Realized, hey, we need to actually have this be a broker. I can't manage for you under the table as an independent contractor. That's probably not legal. So we went ahead and started an LLC, and I partnered with my real estate broker to make it an official brokerage. And this is all kind of on the long-term management side of things, just typical annual leases. So that owner ended up buying a big portfolio. It was 120 units. 60 of those units was one contiguous property. And then the other 60 were just total, just crap holes, for lack of a better word. They were slummed out single family houses. And so we sold all of those. And then I hired some other friends of mine that had worked in property management. And at that point, we were managing 80 units, and Flow kind of got its legs under us. We had, hired two maintenance technicians, and then started growing from there. And so then kind of during during the beginning there, and keep in mind this is just a few years ago, my business partner Tony, whose properties I was managing at the time, said, "Hey, I've got this 4 unit. Would you be interested in short-term rentals?" And to your last question, I'm going to answer your last question a little bit early. When it comes to standing on the top rope and being scared to jump, I tend to be the one that's like kind of scared to even climb up the ropes. Like I'm super laser focused, and so when new opportunities come my way, I'm often like, nope, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to look at this or that. I'm going to stay laser focused on my one niche. And so I was like, no, I'm not looking at short-term rentals. Give me a break. That sounds like a pain in the butt. Like I already have a big enough problem dealing with my current, 70 residents that I've got. And now you're asking me to deal with, 70 a month. No, I don't think I'm going to do that. So he ended up kind of talking me into it. I started to listen to a lot of podcasts. Get Paid for Your Pad was a really influential podcast whenever I first started listening. Started to get some good ideas about short-term rentals, and I thought, you know what, maybe this is going to be a little bit easier than I think it's going to be. It was not, but worth it, 100%. So I started looking into short-term rentals. I started managing a 4-unit building for Tony. And then that started going really well. I met another gentleman who had several Airbnbs, a lot of experience. He had a kind of a company of cleaners that he had hired and trained. And so we ended up partnering together to start a second brokerage called Neat Suites. And Neat Suites is specifically focused on third-party management of short-term rentals. So it's a similar business model to Flow Property Management, where we're finding investors that are buying single-family houses or duplexes, fourplexes, smaller buildings, but then want to put them on short-term rental platforms. And so we got that up and running, and have been taking on more and more units. And of course, we're small. We're still figuring out how to scale. We've got a small boutique hotel coming on next month. That's going to be 8 units. So I think that's going to put us around 23 short-term rentals that we manage right now. But we've developed some really good, I say we've not developed, but we've learned how to implement some really helpful technology around the short-term rental space that allows us to automate an enormous part of the business, which has been super helpful. So I know that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's kind of the entire saga of what has gotten me to now, 2 separate businesses, one managing long-term rentals in that kind of 20 to 80 unit range of properties, and then the second business of managing short-term rentals, which is entirely different, but it is in a lot of ways even maybe more exciting, because I think that there's just a lot less people doing it and a lot of new excitement around the industry. With Airbnb's IPO going so successfully, I think there's going to be a lot more investors' eyes looking into short-term rentals, trying to think how they might be able to monetize, this new opportunity within the real estate industry, which is super exciting.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into that, and let's dive into the Airbnb stuff. We can backtrack on the regular property managing afterwards, but you really got me interested. So that first 4-unit, he was Airbnb-ing all 4 units, or was it just some of them?
Yeah, no, it was all 4. So we dove right in. So it was kind of funny the way it worked out. So there's a 4-unit building. It's a historic building in downtown Covington. 1863 is when it was built. So it was 4-plex. We had just had it totally rebuilt. It was a giant project, historic tax credits. The works. And we put it together. And it was a giant amount of work. And the owner basically was like, "Hey, to make this work, we're gonna have to make more than we would with just apartments. So let's explore some options with short-term rentals." And around that time, again, this is kind of diving into a tiny bit of the nuts and bolts. I was doing this urban house tour, exploring through, freshly remodeled houses in the urban core, and there was a graphic designer, and she had her house on the tour, and I walked through her house, and it was phenomenal. I mean, just this incredibly unique house. And so I talked to her. I was like, "Hey, have you ever done interior design for anybody?" And she said, "No, I've no, all I do is graphic design." I said, "Well, would you do interior design for me? This is what I've got, a 4-unit building. I have no design taste at all. I'm going to go to IKEA and buy a bunch of crap and it's not going to look good." And she was like, "You know what? I'll do your interior design if I can have full creative control." And I said, "You can have full creative control if you meet my budget." And she said, "Okay, let's do it." And so she decorated those 4 units. She bought all the beds, couches. Um, she did an incredible job. And when we put those online, I mean, they turn heads. They really do. I mean, they are just beautiful apartments. And so we started getting a ton of bookings, started gaining traction pretty quickly. And so we never had trouble keeping that one occupied. It was 4 units, but like I said, there's a lot of really helpful software that has sprung up around Airbnb as support software for Airbnb. And then of course, we use Booking.com, HomeAway, VRBO, Expedia, some of these other platforms as well. So I had already dove into a lot of the systems and got everything set up. So the 4 units was not a super large burden. We hit the ground running and haven't looked back.
Yeah, that's cool. That's sounds like a fun project. Because the reason I was asking about 4 units is because it's one thing to fill one, right? But to fill 3 units in the other 3 units in the same area, you've got to have a lot of demand and I guess good marketing and whatnot in that area. But I guess once you explained it, that those were unique, right? You guys decorated them uniquely and they stood out, I'm sure. So it kind of helped to fill those units, I guess, right? So for people, so talk us through the process, I guess, right? So someone comes to you, right? A new client comes to you and goes, "Hey, just bought this property, and I want to Airbnb it. It's completely empty right now. It's a 3-bedroom house, whatever, 1,800 square feet maybe. How does it? Do you guys just take over from there and kind of do all the work? How does it work? How do you work with your clients?"
Yeah. So we can do both. So interior design is not, that's not what I'm good at. That's not what my business partner is good at. That's what Mandy is good at. So typically what we'll do if somebody comes to us with a vacant apartment, we'll say, "Hey, yes, we want to help with the design, but we're not, that's not our strong suit. So we're going to introduce you to our interior designer, and then you all can work out your pricing and that kind of stuff with her. And then once she's done, then we'll take it back over from you." Or what we have sometimes is people that have a pretty decent design eye themselves, and they'll design their own apartments and then bring them to us, and then we can manage them. And that can get a little bit more tricky. We try to tell people up front that B-level short-term rentals don't work, especially during COVID. During COVID, we lowered our prices, and people could book our 1-bedroom unit that's incredible for $80 a night in Cincinnati, in some places, sometimes, and any of the places that were typically $80 a night that were now $50 a night or something like that, that were B level, those nobody was booking them because they could get such high value for such low prices. So B level short-term rentals don't work. So we're very clear with our investors who we manage for right out of the gate. "Hey, if you're going to design this yourself, we don't know what your design quality is, but we're going to tell you, spend some money on your furniture, buy good quality. It's going to be heavily used, buy stuff that's appealing." When you're on Airbnb and VRBO, people are going to scroll through 200 listings before they select one. and you have one picture that is going to turn heads. And once they click on that, then on Airbnb, you have five. There's a small collage. So you want to make sure that you have at least one uh, Instagram worthy photo that you post as your initial picture, and then once they click on that, then you want to have five very beautiful points in your building. And if you have an apartment that doesn't have one, let alone five interesting features, you can just go ahead and assume that you're not going to get many bookings. Um, so we try to be pretty clear up front. Hey, either do a very good job designing this place yourself, or get an interior designer. And and that's not super scalable as far as, as we grow faster and faster, we're going to have some more guidelines. Hey, here's the five couches we recommend. Here's the three beds we recommend. We're going to have to figure out some better processes as we grow. But by and large, right now we're small enough. We've been able to kind of oversee some of the owners' purchasing decisions as far as furniture and stuff. So I know that's super long-winded. So the owner brings us a furnished apartment, whether it's through our designer or through their own design. Um, we go in and we have professional photos taken. I met a photographer that was shooting Airbnb Plus listings for a little while, and so he knew exactly the way Airbnb wanted the photos to look, and what was considered like trendy photography for apartments, and a lot of like apartment photographers will know how to do that. And there was a bit of a learning curve. We needed him to take detail shots of some of the fun little decor we have. Plus, we need, big wide angle lens shots of the room itself. So there was a couple little things like that we had to train him on, but we got a really good photographer, and he takes incredible photos, sometimes to a fault. Sometimes people check in and they're like, wow, this place looked incredible online, and it's still nice, but so we definitely get really good pictures, because that's what people are going to book based off of. So once we get the really good pictures, then we will load those photos onto our management software. So we use a property management system called Guesty, and basically that allows us to we can create one listing and then push it out to Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, HomeAway, Expedia. And anytime we get messages from guests, they will send to one central messaging portal. And then we can have all the check-in instructions and all the other information within this portal, so that it pulls automatically. So, right, we write messages with variable fields within Guesty. So when we get a reservation, it pulls this message, it auto populates the guest's name and all their check-in information, and then sends it out to them and says, hey, thanks for booking. Here's all your check-in information that you need. So that's really helped us to scale a lot, having that one centralized system that we can work out of. So we set them up within that system. We go to the property and install a Samsung SmartThings hub and a Yale smart lock. So we'll put those smart locks on the door, Samsung SmartThings hub, and then we'll link that up to our property management system. And basically what it does is it will write a unique check-in code for the lock that activates 30 minutes before the guest's designated check-in time and deactivates 30 minutes after they're supposed to have checked out. So we don't have any guests that can get back into the listing. A lot of short-term rental managers are kind of mom and pop, and they just put 3 or 4 codes in, and that's what they give to every single guest. But then that can create some safety issues. So we'll install the smart locks into the unit. We'll get get a sign that has the Wi-Fi information. We'll put a guest book in there that has local restaurants, things like that, local event venues, things like that people are going to be drawn to, sporting venues. And then we'll go live. So we'll open it up for bookings online. We have a software called Beyond Pricing that helps with smart pricing rules. So we can put kind of what our base pricing is, our minimum pricing, and uh, it will adjust that. It'll raise the prices automatically on the weekends. It'll drop them on the weeknights, and it's got a lot of factors around our market that it looks at to determine what nightly price to post. So we plug that into the listing, and then we let it run. And there's some strategies we can dive into now or later about search engine optimization on Airbnb, and getting reviews and kind of jump starting a listing, stuff like that. But as far as just onboarding, those are kind of some of the nuts and bolts of bringing on a new property. And tell me, I'm a nuts and bolts guy, so I know I'm super wordy. So if I'm going too nitty gritty here, just let me know and we can take a step back.
No, this is really this is fascinating. No, this is really good. I think it's given, like, I love how you guys have done it, right? I think it's really important that if you can to automate something like this, because service is everything, right? That client, they expect an email. If they get an email straight away with all their instructions, you don't want them getting to the property and they can't get in, you know what I mean? And you want the safety, you want the safety of the property as well, so if it's locked and shit, the more you can automate stuff with things like this, the better, right? Because it all goes on reviews and how the client enjoys their stay, right? So if everything's automated and everything's running on automation, right, it just takes that risk of you forgetting something or something not being done right away and out of the process. So I love that. So then maybe talk a little bit, like you said, about the SEO and the review status, because obviously the issue when you start out is, right, you have no reviews, you're not a super host, none of that stuff, right? So how do you guys get a property up to speed as quickly as possible?
Yeah. So we have a couple things that we'll do. So right out of the gate, we've learned you want to. I think Airbnb is a little bit vague about what they do and don't give search engine optimization to. They'll encourage you to accept same day bookings. I think that boosts your SEO a little bit, but we've found that that's just far too difficult to manage. So we only accept up to 1 day in advance. So somebody can book for tomorrow, but they can't book for tonight. And we've also found that cuts down on parties quite a bit. But I would say definitely allow up to bookings 1 day before. That's going to help your search engine optimization. But maybe more specifically, here's a strategy that we've been diving into that has proven to be fruitful. And we've had some trial and error. So there's a lot of important aspects to this, but it's super simple. When we get a new listing, for the very first 2 weeks that it's online, we post it as available. We make a 4-night maximum reservation. So we don't want people to book for more than 4 nights for the first 2 weeks. And then we'll cut the price by 30 to 40%. We want it to be the lowest on the market for the product that we're offering. But we don't want it to be so low. We don't want to put it on for $10 because then people are going to think it's a scam, right? But if somebody's seeing this beautiful 1-bedroom apartment that they can book for $75, they're going to be really drawn to that, right? So we drop the price for 2 weeks. We make a maximum stay of 4 days. And then what you get with that is that you get a lot of reservations back to back to back in the first 2 weeks, and they're getting a good price point. So any sort of quirks that you may have as a startup listing, oh shoot, we forgot X, Y, and Z. We forgot to put blinds on the 2 windows that are closest to the bed, or we forgot whatever, these really minor things. They're going to have a little bit of grace for that because of the price point that they got it at. Number 2, you're going to have a lot of reservations quickly. So you're going to build your reviews faster. And then number 3, Airbnb gives a little bit of search engine optimization to new listings just to help them get their legs. So they're going to already post you to the top. But if they see Airbnb kind of has this idea of what a 1-bedroom should be worth in my market, and if they see that our prices are below that, then they're going to want people to book that. They're going to want people to take advantage of that opportunity. So they're going to push that listing a little bit more. When they start seeing it getting traction, those listings that get a little bit more traction, I think get a little bit more SEO, because Airbnb sees, hey, these are popular listings, and which means that the more bookings this place gets, the more money we Airbnb are going to make in service fees, right? So they'll kind of push the SEO like that. So once we do that for 2 weeks, typically that's enough to get 2-3 reservations, and then it's legitimate, right? Because anybody can have their brother stay there for a night and then write a review. But once you get 2-3 reservations, then you're kind of off to the races. You've got good legs on Airbnb. So you can kind of go from there. So that's been the most recent tool that we've really been using, and I think that we're finding good success with it. Again, we've only really been able to do it once or twice, but it seems to have proven to be pretty fruitful in these new listings that we've taken on. And then also one more thing to note as far as search engine optimization goes is, if you've got a new listing that you're about to post online, please do not post it between January and March, because Airbnb gives you search engine optimization for new listings, right? So don't waste that on a time when nobody's searching to travel. So you want to post your listing in the spring or in, October, November, December, whenever, because people are traveling for the holidays, or in the spring, they're looking to make summer traveling plans. Even if you're not a vacation destination, people just don't travel first quarter. And so, your listing is going to be top of the heap, and all 3 people that are on Airbnb are going to be able to see it. But that's just not going to cut it for you. And by the time people actually start searching on Airbnb, your search engine optimization is going to wear off, and you're going to be back to the bottom of the stack, and you're going to have no reviews and no traction. So lower the price for 2 weeks, have a maximum stay, so you don't have one dude who makes out like a bandit and gets 2 weeks for the low price.
Yeah.
And then don't launch between January and I'd say April 1st. Once April 1st comes around, you have people with tax refund money and whatever, you start to see travel come back. But I think that those would definitely be 2 tips that I've got just for maximizing those, first few moments you have on Airbnb to really take advantage of that search engine optimization.
Yeah. And then, so how long does it then take them, you'd say, to get to because you want to get to a superhost, right? That's one of the most important things, to get to superhost status, or not?
Yeah, that's super helpful, because people often will use search filters and filter by superhosts. So it's pretty quick. In regards, and it's kind of embarrassing, it's been so long. We got superhost status a few months in, so 2 years ago. To be honest, now I don't even remember all the criteria that we had to meet. I know that there had to be, we had to have something like 8 to 10 reservations with a 4.5+ star review. We have to, and this is even something still that helps with search engine optimization. You have to maintain a response rate of an hour or less. So whenever it was kind of a funny story. When I first got into Airbnb, I sent out a message to a bunch of other superhosts in the area, and I made an Airbnb profile, and I was like, I don't know anything about what I'm doing, so I'm going to start meeting with people. And so I sent out this message, and I sent it to 10 superhosts, expecting maybe one to respond. Well, all 10 responded, because you have to maintain your superhost status. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. This Airbnb community must just be so helpful and so willing to help. Well, then, several of them blew me off once they figured out exactly what I was wanting. But yeah, so you've got to maintain a pretty quick response rate to all your guests. I forget where I was going with that thought.
Who handles that in your business? You guys handle that? You have someone that handles that, or is it again automated?
So we have we have some virtual assistants that handle all the messaging for us, and they're trained in hospitality. Sometimes people worry about virtual assistants because sometimes they can have a really thick accent that's maybe difficult to understand or whatever the case may be. But our communications with short-term rental guests are 99% through messaging. So we very, very rarely have vocal conversations with our guests. So we found great luck with virtual assistants, and they're the ones. So basically, within our database, we have fields that we fill out for each property, and then we have a saved response bank. So that saved response bank is going to say there might be a saved response that is information about the TVs in the property. And then in the property notes specifically, we'll have a box that says TV information, and then I'll write a response. In this listing, there's one TV in the bedroom. It's not on satellite. All you've got is a smart TV, Roku, Netflix, etc. There's another TV in the living room, and we have Netflix, Roku, and satellite for all of your viewing needs. So now, as soon as somebody asks, hey, what's the situation with the TVs in your listing, our virtual assistants can just click that saved response and send it out. And they kind of get smarter as we go. There might be a question that pops up and our assistants don't know the answers. And so then they can shoot us a text message, say, hey, the guest asked about this. How do you want me to respond? And I'll tell them what the answer is. And then they'll say, would you like me to create a saved response with this information? And I say, absolutely. So I would say, probably we've got 15 listings right now. And I probably get maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 messages a week with questions about how guests, questions that guests have and stuff. And a lot of them are maintenance issues and things that I have to address. But by and large, having those virtual assistants has cut down on our communication tremendously.
Yeah, that sounds like you've really figured out great systems for this, right? It really sounds like you guys have got it figured out. It's awesome. Out of interest, if you don't mind me asking, what do you guys charge? How do you guys set that up, right? In terms of what is the client paying you guys?
Yeah, so pricing is everything, right? And as a young business, we're trying to figure out our space in the market. I think traditionally, 15 to 25% is pretty normal. We're able to get the job done pretty efficiently because of the ways that we have automated. And so we pretty much just charge like a flat 15% of gross revenue. So we try to be kind of on the more cost-effective side. Because at the end of the day, if our owners are making more money, then they're going to buy more properties, and they're going to trust us more, to make, calls and things like that. So we're at typically around 15% of gross revenue is what we're charging. Now, sometimes that can change depending on how involved we are, right? So we have a lot of smaller owners, and they want to continue to pay the mortgage and all the taxes, and they want to pay their own utility bills and their own internet bill and things like that. So for a lot of our owners, we don't necessarily have to keep up with the bookkeeping aspect. So our pricing would change if we were handling all the bookkeeping. We manage for a couple people that are bigger property management companies that have, a couple thousand units that are like long-term apartments, and they wanted to try out short-term rentals but didn't have the systems to do it. So for those guys, they have 24-hour maintenance in-house. So there's no reason for us to handle maintenance on their property. They can do it for more efficiently than we can. So if we were handling maintenance coordination and things like that for a property, pricing may vary, but yeah, that's typically the ballpark we're in for your everyday average run-of-the-mill short-term rental.
That's really good when you consider, some property managers charge 10% just for their long-term rentals, right? You guys are obviously doing a lot more organization, systematizing stuff, and just a lot more hands-on stuff. So that's really, I think that's a great price. I think you guys are definitely giving some value, and you guys are doing it really well as well. So there's no doubt about it that you guys know what you're doing. You have a believer over here, that's for sure. That's really cool. Well, let's dive back now into the sort of the long-term rentals that you guys manage, right? You guys manage a lot of a good amount of apartments, right? Or multifamily, that's for sure, right? More than single family, right? How has that process been? How setting up that, because it's just one thing to manage a few here and there, but to build a company and have however much units that you guys manage now, right? It's a process, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tricky. I never pretend to be something that I'm not, right? So I'm a pretty small apartment guy. So we've got 130 units that we're managing right now. It's challenging. There's a lot of unique challenges that come with long-term property management. If in the short-term world, if there's a resident or a guest that is a pain in the butt, they're a pain in the butt for a week or less. Long-term, you've got residents that you're stuck with for a year. And so you have to learn how to navigate those relationships. You have to swallow your pride a lot. So we've got a young team that is extremely sharp, extremely bright, and we're growing quickly. But it's just been a giant learning curve for us getting up and going. I mean, there's so much to it. So we're pretty software heavy on that side as well. We use a company called Rent Manager, which, if you're unfamiliar with Rent Manager, it's similar to like an Appfolio or a Buildium or Propertyware or something. Yeah, something like one of those. So it's pretty simple. All the bookkeeping is built into the software. Residents can pay rent online, etc. We have basically the way Rent Manager works is they realize, hey, there's only a few things that we're really good at, and that's accounting and organization of data. But we're not the best in the market at payment processing. We're not the best in the market at resident screenings, at maintenance coordination, you name it. And so what they do is they've got open API, and they have a lot of partners that build these API connections with Rent Manager, so their softwares can kind of plug and play into Rent Manager, which is not super user friendly. When you dive in with like an Appfolio or something like that, they've got a lot of built-in software. They've got their own payment processor, their own screening software, etc. But the thing that Rent Manager allows that I do like is if ever there's a software that is not cutting it for us anymore, is not doing a good job, has bad customer service, we can drop them and we can bring on a new payment processor or a new screening company, which it's a nice option to be able to have that to kind of plug into our system. So so we use that. We have a couple maintenance people on staff and leasing agent, a property manager that keep up with all of our stuff. And I think, like I said, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and we're getting comfortable in the space. There's a lot to learn. Real estate is a super litigious industry, so you've got to really make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. So I've got a lot of really good mentors, and I'm part of the apartment association, which has kind of helped us navigate through that. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of an open book. I don't know if there's anything specific that you want to dive into.
Well,
how I manage it, etc.
Yeah. Well, maybe for one, because obviously a lot of investors, I think, listen to this podcast. So maybe talk about some best practices with working with a property manager, right? From your standpoint, right? Because I think, truthfully, property managers, sometimes they get the rough end of the deal. People are trying to beat you up over how much they're paying you, right? They're like, oh, 10%, 8% for this, blah blah blah. But you get, in reality, you guys do a lot, right? And you know, it's not just, hey, collect rent once a month, right? And that's it, right? The guys do a lot of work, and I think that work a lot of times goes unseen and unthanked for, right? It's a thankless job sometimes, right? I think.
Right.
Maybe talk about some of the best practices for people to work with property managers, so that it's, you know, a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, um, I think the most important thing is being open and honest up front. So I always say that I rather have an ugly conversation now before there's ugly emotions attached to it. And by that, I mean, you know, when you're meeting with your property manager for the first time, talk to them about your expectations of the property, and you know, be willing to hear them out as they're talking about the budget, and you know, about some of these nitty gritty details. And if there's things that you don't like, you know, talk about them, and be graceful and gentle, but bring up frustrations that you have, and really sort through and try to get on the same page before the year starts, right? Like, I think what happens a lot of times is investors are like, you know, we're here for cash flow, right? Like, you know, if there's big capex things, let's try to hold off on those this year. Let's try to, you know, maintain the apartments, but maybe we're not investing a giant amount of money into them. And that's super vague, and that's not helpful at all when it actually comes to, hey, here's this challenge. Do we spend money to fix it? Do we put it off, etc.? So in the beginning of the relationship, if you really dive into the budget, and you dive into your expectations, and you lay out realistic capex budgets for needed capital expenditures, and you assess the present condition of your property, and you understand that maintenance costs may be higher than you expect, or you really try to get a good grip of why the property management company is expecting maintenance costs to be at a certain level, or why they're expecting delinquency, or they're expecting vacancy to be at a certain level, and really trying to understand all of those and hash them out, and you know, maybe add ideas, add thoughts on how to cut costs. But just having those conversations up front will save on so much heartache, because then, instead of the property manager coming to you at the end of the year and saying, you know, hey, here's the results, this is how, you know, we did, there's a lot more expectation up front. There's a lot more clarity as far as what you want. So I know I kind of bounced a little bit all over, but I think if I was to boil that down, I would say a lot of times investors are super motivated about finding new properties, but once they have them, they're a little bit more apprehensive to sit down and diligently comb through expenses and budgets. But just take a breath and realize the budget is important, and that clarity on expectations up front is super important, and the nitty gritty details are super important to the property managers, because they're the ones that have to execute. So deal with the nitty gritty details now, so that later you don't have to deal with you know, failed expectations and things like that.
Yeah. So how often do you like to speak to owners of property? Weekly, monthly?
I think weekly can be a little bit overkill, because often there's not much new to go through, but I think monthly meetings with property managers is super helpful, just to gauge, this is where we are, this is where we were, this is where we're going. And you know, if there's owners that want to be more hands-on, if they want to know what the latest resident conflict was, if they want to know you know, how are our maintenance reviews, are our residents pleased with the quality of maintenance that they're receiving, you know, things like that, yeah, maybe a weekly call would be necessary. But by and large, I feel like the majority of information can be conveyed in a good monthly call.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important as well that owners don't micromanage as well, right? There's a level of overseeing things, right? Because sure, if someone's micromanaging everything with you guys, it can be very frustrating and annoying, right?
Right. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you hire us so that you don't have to think about that.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
You want to have it in your mind, but maybe not at the front of your mind all the time.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, if you want to micromanage it, maybe you should consider managing it yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. Anything else you want to share in terms of working with a property manager? I know there's stuff about property management itself, but in terms of working with owners that people should take into consideration. No, you covered a lot there. That was pretty good.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm just trying to think through any other. I think it's super helpful. I have some owners that anytime they're looking at new properties, they might shoot me over a pro forma or photos of the property, or maybe they'll invite me to come on a walkthrough. And I think getting your property manager's opinion, they know the market locally. They know everything about the clientele that you're going to be leasing to the jobs in the area. If the property's on a bus route, there's a lot of those details that I can help with, that your other property managers can help with. So don't be afraid to ask them to come along to a property. Honestly, they're probably going to find it a breath of fresh air to get out of the office anyway. So going and walking through properties with your property manager, I think, can be very valuable. Having them look through your pro forma and tell you if they think your numbers are off, etc. I think getting them involved as quickly as possible is always helpful.
Yeah, and I think from an owner's perspective, it always helps to get that perspective, right? Because we don't have our finger on the pulse the same way that you guys are, right? You guys are renting units all day long. You're dealing with these tenants. You're in the area, right? You know everything that's going on a lot better than a lot of owners, I think. So I think that's great. That especially, I think, out of state investors as well, right? It's great to have someone that's boots on the ground there as well that can kind of go look at these properties and give you their opinion as well. So that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man. This has been really interesting. There's especially the Airbnb stuff, right? Is just really interesting to me. It's an interesting concept to kind of put into place and to kind of maximize the value of that of the rental potential for that property, right? You can get way more for Airbnb than you can for a rental done the right way, of course. So it seems like you guys are doing that. But this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate, I always like to ask some wrestling-related real estate questions. So the first one is, what would your wrestling name be? If you picked a wrestling name for yourself, what would it be, you think?
Okay. So, and I'm glad you prefaced this because I had to think on this just for a little bit. But admittedly, I have not followed wrestling a ton, so this may be ridiculous. But growing up, so first name's Jeremiah. My dad, his favorite movie growing up was a Robert Redford movie called Jeremiah Johnson. And my mom said that I was named after the prophet in the Bible. My dad said I was named after the mountain man. So one way or the other, my dad growing up always called me Mountain Man because in Jeremiah Johnson, he was basically lived out by himself in the mountains. He was a pilgrim and basically hunted bears and, got to know Indians. And he was sort of like the original hippie from like the, early 1800s. So it's a super cool movie, but he's just this rough and tough mountain man. So I think I would have this crazy burly persona. And I think I would probably go by the mountain man for sure.
Mountain man. You got the beard already, so you kind of have
I'm already working. I would definitely grow it out a little bit more. I think it would merit a burlier beard.
That's awesome. I like that a lot, mountain man. So every wrestler has a special move, right? It's their biggest strength. When they hit that move in the match is over. So what is your biggest strength in real estate, you think? Your special move?
I think my biggest strength. Right. I started listening to podcasts 4 or 5 years ago, and they were always saying, real estate is the most unsophisticated business. Everybody's still doing it on an Excel spreadsheet and they're all still keeping paper files. There's no technology in real estate. Well, as we all know that landscape has totally changed. But as I first started hearing that about how unsophisticated real estate was, I started looking into real estate technology a lot. And I think one of my strong suits is understanding technology and how different softwares communicate between each other, and how application interfaces work and things like that. So I don't know if that's a great answer to the question, but I think whenever I dive into something, I analyze the situation and then I start thinking, all right, how can we add technology to this to automate this and get this off our plate so that we can have more time to think creatively about other problems.
Yeah, I noticed that with your with the Airbnb business that you mentioned that a lot. So I think that, and I think I love it. Right? Why not use technology to its full potential? Right? It's brilliant. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken in your investing, or in your real estate career? Sorry.
We had a golly, it's like biggest. So there's some things I don't know whether I should share or not, but I'm a pretty open book. So we had an employee get assaulted on one of our properties, and it wasn't no long-term damage, a couple stitches, but that was a pretty big blow, because I think given a little bit more caution and a little bit more some clearer judgment calls given the situation, gauging the emotional temperature of the residents before we send a employee out to perform service issues or whatever. There was some judgment calls that were made by me that I should have thought through better. I should have been a lot more cautious. That led to somebody on my team who I love and care for getting hurt on the property and being put in harm's way. And thankfully, there was no there weren't any long-term ramifications of it. Everything kind of panned out. But police showed up, and it blew out of proportion very, very quickly. And I think I spent a lot of time after the assault calling my employees and apologizing and making sure they were okay, and seeing how I could meet their emotional needs. It sounds like maybe it wasn't as big a deal as it was, but but it was a really scary situation. So I think that after that, I wanted to take a lot more time to put safety procedures into place, and to make sure that people weren't just using basic caution in properties and things like that. So again, that's another long-winded answer, but that was definitely one of my biggest learning curves, to try to bounce back from that and make sure that my employees do feel safe, and to make sure that they are still excited to work for me, and to make sure that they're still excited to be in the real estate industry when there's a threat of potential physical harm that could come, I guess. Nobody wants to be put in that position, but I was forced into it and had to learn how to navigate through that. And it turned out well. It was a great learning experience, but it was no fun. I was on vacation. I was hiking through Zion National Park when I got that call, and so I had to take a minute and figure that out. But yeah, that was definitely the biggest body slam.
Yeah, that's rough, man. I'm sorry that happened to your employee. Was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it, and how did you overcome it? And you kind of mentioned it earlier, but maybe explain how you overcame that fear.
Yeah. So with the short-term rentals, I was looking at it, and I thought it had potential, but I was afraid to jump into it. I thought it was going to take up too much brain space, too much time. I had other priorities. And how I overcame that was there's a fine line, right? You've got on one end of a spectrum, you've got analysis by paralysis, and on the other end, you have a cowboy who just shoots from the hip. And there's a sweet spot in between where you are just well read and then you dive in.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to lean more towards this side of things. And so what helped me jump from the top rope was just watching tons of YouTube videos, reading books, listening to podcasts, trying to get as well read as I could in a short period of time. And then once I felt like I at least had a decent grip on the situation, then I jumped. And so what I'd say to somebody who's standing on the top rope, sometimes there's a little bit of healthy fear. And that fear is, holy smokes, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. And you don't want to let that fear control you, but you also want to nod to that fear and talk to some mentors, and try to learn at least a tiny bit about what you're getting into, and get a network you can lean on whenever you do have questions, and then go ahead and jump.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Man, this has been fun. This has been really interesting, having this conversation and listening to you, man. It's time has really flown by so quickly. I can't believe it's time to end the interview, really. But thank you so much, man, for making the time. I really, really appreciate it. Obviously, you're a very busy guy, so I appreciate you sharing everything you did today. But before you go, can you tell people where they can, if they want to reach out, how they can get in touch with you, how can they find out more about your companies and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach out one of two ways. If you look us up on theneatsuites.com, neat, N-E-A-T, neatsuites.com, or for long-term property management, our website is currently being rebuilt. So our website may be down depending on the time that you search for us, but Flow Property mgmt.com, F as in Frank, LOW, propertymanagement.com. Two places they could jump and reach out to me. If you're ever in the Cincinnati market, I'd love to grab coffee or whatever with anybody that is interested, but that's definitely the best two ways.
Cool. And I'll put those in the show notes in the description down below. Well, Jeremiah, thank you so much, man. This has been awesome. I really appreciate it, man. It's been a lot of fun, and enjoy the rest of your day over there in Cincinnati.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an open book, man. Anything I can share, I will. And if I don't know, I'll tell you. But yeah, anytime I can help, I'd love to.
Cool. Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely. Have a good one.